Hey everybody, it's Jerry Rascal with you, and today we are talking about the Avengers. Yes, today we are going to be looking at Avengers number 4, and if you are a fan of Marvel history and the Avengers, you know that this is a big monumental issue. So buckle up for this one. We're going to be going through this a lot. This is truly an iconic issue. Of course, before we get going, thank you to everybody who's been subscribing to the channel. We are growing by leaps and bounds, and that is all thanks to you. So thank you all so much, not only for those of you who have subscribed, but also maybe who's shared the channel with somebody that you know who is a fan of comics, fan of art, and they've subscribed as well. So thank you so much. That is how we're going to reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. And of course, when we get there, you can have the opportunity to win free artwork. So when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to be picking 6 subscribers at random, and those people are going to win. Each of them is going to win one original piece of artwork. And in the past, I've been showing them here, you know, on the camera in hand. I actually went ahead and scanned them, so I'm going to show them here so that you can actually see these in all their glory. So all of these are done by me. They're all hand-drawn, hand-colored. They're 11 by 17 on Bristol board, so they're perfect if you want to frame them. We have, of course, here Spider-Man, the one that started it all. We have the X-Men. We have the Incredible Hulk. We have, of course, the Avengers that we're going to be talking about today. And then we have the 2 that are still a pending series. We have Captain America, and we have the Fantastic Four. So the nice thing here is I've been waiting to launch the Captain America series until we had Captain America in the Avengers. And spoilers, this is the one. So with that said, let's get to this comic because, again, this is a big one. So let's head over there and check it out. Okay, so we have the Avengers, and of course, this is the big thing. We have the return of Captain America to the Marvel Universe. So technically, Captain America, this is not, you know, obviously his debut. Captain America was featured in comics during World War II, and prior to it being Marvel Comics, and then disappeared. And so here is Stan Lee and Jack Kirby deciding to bring this iconic character back, and what better book to do it in than the Avengers. So we've got this great classic iconic cover. I mean, this is right up there in terms of great Marvel covers of all time. You've got, you know, the whole team, Captain America, they're all coming at you. They're all in great individual poses. You got this nice tilt of the background, that subtle little cityscape background, which is very minor, but it does ground the figures, which is nice. You get the big white background. That's perfect too. I mean, this is just a great cover. I did want to point out a couple things, that especially about the shield, that is a little different here. So if you're if you're a fan of Captain America, if you're familiar with Captain America, obviously from the movies or from current comics, you know that Captain America's shield looks a little bit different, and that is the color pattern of the stripes. So typically, Captain America's shield goes from the outside in is red, white, red, and then the blue circle with the star. Here, we've got a change. It's this kind of subtle, small red, white, blue, and then blue inside, at least here on the cover. And it changes inside the issue as well. So there's a little bit of issue with the continuity of the shield. But again, this is something that we'll see as when we launch the Captain America individual series, you'll see it's drawn more consistently there. So, and then the other thing you have, only shadows really. There's a little bit of shadow hinted on the red, but most of it is on the white stripes of the shield. And the way that it's done and the where these particular dark marks are made in terms of shadow almost makes the white look transparent, like we could see through it. And that's a sort of blurred or slightly opaque shadow of his arm behind the shield. So that's where it's a very simple thing. You just don't follow the lines of the arm coming down. You would do it maybe a little bit on the top, a little bit on the bottom, and you don't want to track that same arm. So that's a small minor thing. I do want to point this out, a couple things that I really like. One, we're coming from Avengers number 3, where we saw this design of Iron Man, which is very good. But in this comic, the mask is much pointier at the top. So in issue 3, it kind of was rounded off. It was a round helmet, and it did have the kind of peak in the middle, but the corners of the yellow part of the mask were rounded to the back. Here, they just stick up straight. So that's a change in terms of the Iron Man design. And then the other thing that I actually really, really like here too is the coloring. And I'm assuming it's not, I'm assuming this was original. The problem with a comic this old, as you can see from this image, this cover's been through a lot. There's a lot of wear and tear. There's some age, the paper itself is aging, but the colors are pretty good. And what I'm talking about is the subtle differences in Captain America's red and blue versus, say, the red and blue on Giant Man behind him, or the red and blue on Thor, or even kind of the red on Iron Man the Wasp. It's all subtly different. So if you look, like you've got Giant Man here, his blue is a little bit lighter. We can see the difference between this area of kind of the little shorts versus Captain America's leg. Same thing with Thor. The blue is a little bit lighter, so Captain America's leg stands out. It doesn't blend in together. And then, again, the red is toned down on Giant Man, whereas it's much more of almost like an orangey red on Captain America's boots, the shield, and his glove. Same thing with Thor's cape. Could be a very bright, vibrant red, but it's not competing with the red of Captain America's shield. So that's great color balance in a cover like this, where there's so much of the same color over and over. So much red, so much blue. How do you separate those visually? And I think the colorist here did a great job. I don't know who the credit goes to for the colorist, for the cover, but I know who does the inside, and we'll talk about that as we take a look at the interior of the book. But overall, just an awesome, iconic cover. So I tell you always at this point, this is a scanned PDF copy of the comic. So as we just pointed out, this is from 1963, so it's an old comic. The wear and tear of trying to get a hold of an actual copy, original copy of this would be extremely difficult to do. It'd be very expensive. You could get reprints, but the problem with reprints is you never know exactly, unless you can compare them side by side, what was changed in that reprint. Was there color changes? Were there page turns fixed? Is there an extra pinup or something in there to help balance it out? This is as close to the original, essentially, as we can get, with the added value that we can zoom in, because it's a digital PDF version, so we can zoom in, we can zoom out. I can help illustrate and emphasize things. So I love this format. Let's talk about the creative team. So we have Stan Lee is still writing. Jack Kirby is the penciler. And then uncredited here, the inker is George Roussos. So George Roussos, we've talked about him in my Hulk series, so you can go back and see some of those. The issues that Steve Ditko inked on the Hulk, George Roussos inked some of those. And it was if I remember correctly, it was a really nice pairing. We kind of did like that combination of the two. I think it's fairly well regarded, so that's pretty cool. So we've got George Roussos on inks, and then as well uncredited, we have Stan Goldberg on colors. So again, great job by that team. And of course, Artie Simic on letters. So we don't want to forget about Artie. As I say all the time, the best compliment you can give to a letterer is, I didn't even notice it, which means they didn't make any mistakes, because when a letterer is doing their job correctly, we just take it for granted, unfortunately. But it's one of those things. It's sort of the unheralded hero of the book. If you don't have a good letterer, your letterers are weird. The font is not right. Things don't balance out. You misspellings, whatever. It can really take you out of the book. But Artie does a great job. So there we go. Real quick story recap. Actually, that'll happen as we turn the page past the splash page. There is a little bit of a recap of the story, but the Avengers, from the time that they formed, within a couple, technically 1.5 issues, kind of, the Hulk quits. He's like, nope, you guys don't like me, I'm out. And so Submariner, who also has a great hatred for humanity, decides, I'm going to use the Hulk. Let's pair up together. The two of them call out the Avengers, and the Avengers end up winning and defeating both of them on this island. And so that's kind of where our story opens up. But we'll get there in a second. Let's talk about the splash page real quick. Not my favorite. I don't like splash pages like this where it's just essentially another version of the cover, and in this case a far less successful version of the cover. It's boring. The figures are all standing profile, which is never the best view of your characters, only because it flattens them out. You don't see the depth. Like Captain America here is what's called a 3/4 view, where one shoulder is slightly turned kind of at a 45-degree angle. Either one is towards us, one is away from us. So that's a good figure where you can see the whole body, and it moves in space. One leg is overlapped by the other, so that's behind him. With profile shots, it's just straight and flat. So that's not superb. And then again, there's no action, there's no nothing, and we've already seen it. We know Captain America is here with the Avengers. Here's Captain America walking towards the Avengers. So it's one of those things where you go, it's just not a great splash page. Why are we wasting an entire page on this when that could be used for action and excitement and story? So again, not my favorite. And again, there's your shield, like I was talking about. So through most of this issue, the shield is colored or drawn and colored as red, white, blue. Where in reality, not reality, but in future iterations, we see that is changed up. So here's what I was talking about. Here's our recap from the end of the last issue. The Avengers are trying to get a hold of Namor. He dives away, and the Avengers let him go. So that's a nice little, recap there within one panel at the end. And now we take it from a different perspective, because we saw the Avengers leave him, let Namor go, and sort of summarize what happened. Here we see what happened from Namor's perspective as he left. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. I think all these panels in here are pretty good. I really like the flying Namor as he's coming at us, and like the passage of his motion is causing the water to kind of splash up. That's how fast he's going. The foreshortening of the body as it's flying towards you horizontally, also done extremely well. And then the underwater scenes are good. I like the inclusion of the fish, and in this one, it's a big manta ray. And it took me a second, and this is where I did have a note of, I wish that the parts of the manta ray, so it's not quite as bad when you zoom in, but the parts of the manta ray that aren't shadowed are the same color as the background. This blue's a little bit darker, but not much. It doesn't have to be as dark as Submariner. That's nice, where it really helps him pop out from the background, but still that nice blue tone. But we could go something in between the two. Certainly today, with today's coloring techniques, we could do that. But I would like to do that, and that would help pop out the manta ray from the background better. I think that would be good. So Namor swims away, and he's looking for his people. So as the rightful ruler of Atlantis, he's looking for the fellow Atlanteans who have fled, and he doesn't know where they are. So Fantastic Four Annual #1 kind of talks about that. We'll get there when we launch the Fantastic Four series, of course. In the Arctic, he comes across a group of native folks who are worshiping a figure frozen in ice. If you, again, anybody who's a even remote fan of Marvel Comics probably knows this story by heart, right? So we don't have to get into the story part too much. This frozen figure, Namor, in his anger, throws it into the ocean, where now this figure can be found. I found the throwing motion very comical in a way. Like, I get what he's doing, but he's almost like he's tilting so far to underhand it. Now, you want the body of Submariner to really be twisted and turned for that extreme action of throwing, right? But the way he's doing it almost underhanded, this tells you my age, and maybe other Gen Xers will, if you're watching this, will understand this reference. I'm going to put a photo here to show you, but immediately came to mind was professional baseball pitcher Dan Quisenberry. Dan Quisenberry was known for this sort of underarm submarine pitching technique, and every one of us tried it, especially with things like wiffle ball when we were kids, and that's what it reminded me of. So there we go. So back to Submariner. There's his throw, looking like Dan Quisenberry. But he goes on a rampage. The natives flee, and then, of course, the block of ice into the ocean begins to melt, so that figure becomes free and visible. Now, so we cut to the Avengers going home after their battle with Submariner and the Hulk in a submarine. Now, I talk a lot about transitions. This has been a big point of contention for me recently, and I've talked about the 3 kinds of transitions that I think are important to be used in a comic. Number 1 is a page turn. So technically, this is a page turn. We turn the page on the right, and our next scene is the Avengers in a different scene. So we've turned the page. That part is fine. So you can do that. Number 2, you can do a visual transition. And that is where you have either something that mirrors the imagery. So you would have, the figure in ice being applied, and then maybe you have, somebody laying on the floor of the submarine or something. But the idea would be you would have this visual matches with this visual, even though the scene is different. That's a way to do a visual transition. And the third one is what's the word I'm looking for? Is a thematic transition. So a thematic transition is where you would have somebody talking about, like, this slowly begins to melt, and then maybe you cut to somebody holding a glass of ice cubes and going, oh my gosh, it's so hot, my ice is slowly starting to melt. That's a thematic, where we repeat that theme through it. A line of dialogue or narration is moved from scene to scene. That's a way to do it, right? So here we have a little bit of both. We have, of 2 of the 3, we have the figure in the ice, we have a page turn, and then we see the figure in the water. So we've got sort of 2 of our transition points. So that's not a bad transition there, really. The one thing I do wish, but because the panels are so small, again, this is where it would be nice if you didn't have that big splash page. Maybe we'd have more room for a bigger panel here. Things would get shifted down, but we'd have an extra page to work with where we would see the scene set of the outside of the submarine. So maybe, again, you're still using your page turn. You're still using your visual transition. You could show the submarine and then, up above, on the top of the water, the floating figure. Like that's a way to do it. And I wish we could see it, because it's not exactly clear if you don't remember the previous issue or kind of just infer the fact that they're in a submarine. You'd be like, where are they? So they got the figure, they drag him into the submarine, and they find him, and they're like, who is this? Man appears to be frozen, but who is he? Now, this is my opinion, or not opinion, but I would have liked to have seen him maybe still in ice, or at least mostly iced, when the Avengers pull him in. My question is, how, if he's not in the ice, how come he doesn't drown? He's floating face down in the water. In the ice, he's in suspended animation. Once he's out of the ice, wouldn't he start to breathe? And isn't he not breathing water? How long can Captain America go without oxygen? So anyway, it's nitpicky. But then we get this awesome view of this torn costume, and underneath is the actual Captain America costume that has held up extremely well. Whatever he was wearing on the outside did not hold up being frozen over time, but his Captain America costume is apparently incredibly durable. And so, yeah, this is an iconic image of the Avengers having him on this bed in the submarine, and realizing who he is. So yeah, pretty good there. It is interesting. So he Captain America wakes up and kind of freaks out, and they're like, who are you? And he's like, that's me. I'm Captain America. And they're like, are you though? Like, you haven't aged. You've been in the water for 20 years. Like, where have you been? And how can you be this young and all this kind of stuff? And he's like, well, let's fight and that'll prove it. And it's just so cliche superhero stuff. Like, we can't do a DNA test. We can't check your fingerprints. We're the Avengers. We have access to stuff. We can't check your dental records. No. The only way to truly prove it is to fight for about 2 seconds. And then everybody goes, yeah, this guy fights like Captain America. He must be Captain America, because nobody else in the world has ever possibly, put on a costume and pretended to be somebody else. I do like the panel here, panel number 3, which I said in my notes, I was like, this is a really impressive panel to fit these figures in nice balance and composition in a panel that's really small. Remember, this would have been drawn at like 10 1/4 by 15 inches of the whole page. So this is probably about a 5-inch by 5-inch panel. And you've got Giant Man, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America all fighting. And nobody's really, the line work all works. Nobody's interfering with anybody. The poses are all good. Like, that's a really great, this is the kind of thing, like, if this was me, when they have that moment, I mean, that's a half a page. Like, I would put a really big panel of them kind of locking horns, and then you have your smaller panels around. But nope, great art for a very small panel. So that works really well. Captain America explains what happened to him. So this is where we see it, where everybody thought he was dead. The motorcycle, crazy, busting through, I guess, whatever, a wall, a barrier, whatever. And you can see the front tire breaks the panel border, which is a very powerful and subtle thing to do when you're drawing. You want things. This is the comics version of, well, we had 3D comics, but they never really worked that good. This is sort of 3D, meaning how do we show this coming right at us? It's so fast, it's so powerful, the panel can't contain it anymore. We break the panel. The only problem I have is the tire ends right on the panel border of the second panel. You either shorten it up so that it's only breaking this border here, or you break both borders. But having it sit here, that's not sorry, I'm looking at, that's not the best way to do it. Let's just say that. So we've got Captain America and Bucky in civilian clothes as they were undercover, and this plane, this bomb, we together would call a drone, a remote control bomb plane is taking off to destroy America, and Cap and Bucky go after it. Bucky manages to get on it, but they can't defuse the bomb part of it in time. It explodes, and Cap falls into the water and gets frozen. So we've all seen that kind of that story. It's changed, obviously, a little bit in Captain America in the movie, in the first Avenger movie, but similar-ish concept, right? It's close enough that we go, okay, that works. And here he is. And now he's coming back to the world, the modern world of the times. And we'll see how he reacts to the world and how the world reacts to him. And so the Avengers land in New York. And before anything can happen, boom, they're suddenly turned mysteriously to stone. And everybody thinks it's some kind of a hoax, which is very strange that nobody would stop and go, geez, why are these statues in such weird poses of sort of warding off something strange? And Captain America is just kind of like, okay, I guess. I mean, oh, well, let me just find out what's going on. And he sees the United Nations, heads over that way, talks to this guard, this police officer who, is quite moved since he saw Captain America as a kid. I like this Captain America face. This is a very Jack Kirby Captain America face. From the small eye holes in the mask, the dark shadow on the forehead around the A, how the angle of the wings. Even you can see like his cowl is a neck piece, comes down over his head, and then his shirt is that chainmail. There's a nice seam to differentiate the two. So that's pretty cool. Like, this is a very quintessential Captain America image. He manages to get a motel room. And my question was, how does he get a motel room? A, he has no money. B, he's in Captain America uniform. He has no real clothes. Like, at no point does he put on civilian clothes, even in the privacy of what's supposed to be where he's staying. Like, I'm going to sleep. He sleeps in his Captain America costume. But he has no money. So how would he buy clothes? Like, it's a whole thing. Like, the logistics of somebody who suddenly comes out of suspended animation after decades is handled a little nonchalantly, let's say. But that's fine. Yeah. So, and then who walks in but the Avengers friend Rick Jones, and Steve is immediately taken by the similarity between Rick Jones and Bucky. Now, I would argue that if you look at this, Bucky is blonde and Rick Jones is not. Doesn't mean anything. I personally, I never quite understood it. Like, why? I mean, I suppose it's very possible that Rick Jones, the partner of the Hulk, the guy who helped bring the Avengers together and becomes Captain America's partner, spoilers, as a modern Bucky, like, because he just happens to look exactly like Captain America's old partner, seemed a little hokey to me. My guess is that I always felt like Captain America, when you see at this point, Steve Rogers, let's call him Steve Rogers, because he really is just a guy at this point. Steve Rogers has Bucky, his best friend. Well, and in this case, in this instance, Bucky is not his childhood friend. Bucky is a young teenage partner during World War II. So it's not like they spent an entire life together, but he is his friend, his partner, his right-hand guy. And I feel, and to him, this just happened. Like, Bucky just died, and then he wakes up not knowing decades have gone by. So that's a big thing. So I think it's just on his mind. And I think just about any young teenage boy who walked in the door would make him think that it's, remind him of Bucky. By the way, Cap, lock your door. FYI. Like, yeah, I know it's been a while, but I mean, I'm sure they locked their doors in the 30s and 40s. So, what am I going to say? But yeah, Rick comes in and he's looking for the Avengers, and he doesn't know, he doesn't really know Captain America. So he doesn't know if he has something to do with it. They come to an agreement, and all of a sudden Captain America takes charge. And he's like, "You're going to help me." And he's like, "You got it, buddy." So that Captain America, when he focuses his mind, no matter what's happening around him or with other people, he can always pull his mind back to that mission and focus. It's one of the things that makes Captain America such a great character and such a strong character, even though he's technically a guy without real, what we call superpowers, right? So they look at some photography, and they find in the group of photographers that were at the dock waiting for the Avengers, there's one guy who's got a device that is clearly not a camera. Here's my question. Who's taking pictures of the photographers, and how did they get the negatives? Because they've got pictures, and you can print photographs, but you have to have the negative. And especially if you want to try to enlarge stuff. So I don't understand how they got, whose film is this, and why would anybody take a picture of the photographers? It makes no sense. And then you see the picture here. It's a dude with sunglasses and a hat and dark hair and a weird gun, a weird space gun. And they're like, Rick's like, "You got it. The teen brigade's going to find him. Don't worry about it." And you see all the kids finding people that are sort of similar, but it's not them. And you're like, there's no way you'd find that guy. You don't see his mouth. You don't see enough detail. You can't see his hair cut, you just see that it's a little bit dark underneath, and it's a black and white photograph as well. So there's no idea like what color was the hat, what color is the coat. None of this works. And then Captain America's running around trying to pick up leads, and he just kind of happens to finally stumble on him, and he recognizes him not by the hat, not by the hair, not really even the glasses maybe, but the gun. So you're like, it's just pure luck, just dumb luck, that you could find somebody. But that's what happens, and Cap busts in, and there are other people in the room who pull guns and shoot. Here's my problem with this. He's looking in the window. He sees one guy. He breaks in. All of a sudden, there's 3 other guys shooting. Where did those guys come from? We don't have an establishing shot from outside into the room to tell us there's 10 guys, 4 guys. How many people are in that room? When I'm looking at this, as far as I go, there's 1. And now all of a sudden, there's different people shooting. Who are these other people? So that's where what you do is you go from, in panel 4, Captain America running across the roofs. And then on panel 5, instead of being in the room looking out, we look over Captain America's shoulder through the window, and we see the 5, 6 guys that are in there with guns. And so that's how you do it. This is a nice shield throw, very nice, where it just sort of slices through the guns. That's a great Captain America moment there. And then we see his fighting style. Captain America is very agile, moving, kicking. That's the way Jack Kirby always really drew him. He's not the kind of character that's going to just stand up toe-to-toe and just trade punches, because again, he doesn't technically have superpowers. He's as strong as a human can be, but he's not super strong or super fast. But all the stuff that he can do, he maximizes to the most, which is, leaping over these guys, diving into the crowd, punching and kicking in all directions. This is an incredibly iconic and just sort of very stereotypical Jack Kirby chaos fight. There's arms and limbs everywhere. Like I said, Captain America is kicking and punching in 4 different directions at the same time and not looking like it's bothering him one bit. And then he just rolls into the next move. That's really, really good. There's a coloring error here, which is you see the green. So there's a little bit of kind of using this green as a background. There's a sort of a figure, a hat, green there. And then Cap's leg is colored green as well instead of blue. So that should be blue right there. But again, not the end of the world. I'm okay with it. The chaos is what's really important there, and that's really good. So our guy that Cap has come to find, turns out he is an alien. And I wrote this, he is a broccoli alien. So this is a nice reveal on the page turn. This is something that's really important that I think gets lost sometimes. If I'm going to have somebody pull a mask off, or a mystery figure steps out of the shadows, or from behind a door, or breaks through a wall, or whatever it is, I don't want the reader to see it before they turn the page. That's the mystery. So like here, even if I put it on the right-hand page, as I'm starting to read the left-hand page, your eyes, you can see it. And it ruins that surprise. You don't get that shock of, oh. And so here, Cap finally reaches the guy, knocks the gun out of his hand, and grabs him. And it turns out he's an alien. And all the goons that were working for him, they didn't even know he was an alien. So that's a pretty incredible mask to fit all that broccoli head inside of that mask. But he does it. So that is really good. And now Cap gets the story, and it's pretty funny that here's a guy that just literally came from a day ago, in his mind, fighting World War II, to now he's dealing with aliens, and it doesn't even shake him a bit. He's like, okay, got it. And this guy tells his story. He crash landed on Earth centuries ago. He's been stuck here all this time. Cap speculates that he is the creation of the Medusa myth, because he turned people to stone and he's got this crazy hair. So they must have thought it was snakes. But the whole point is he's got his spaceship crashed in the ocean, and it's buried so deep he could never get it out to repair it. And he managed to meet the Submariner, and Submariner's like, I'll get your ship out if you defeat the Avengers for me. And that's why the guy turned the Avengers into stone. Now, I'm going to point this out. This is kind of a spoiler for our X-Men series. We have a long way to go before we get there. But if you, again, are a Marvel fan and you have read the history of with the X-Men and you know kind of what happened through arguably the most popular time, or one of the most popular times of the X-Men, this alien might look familiar. So, spoilers, if you don't want to know what happens in X-Men and you just haven't been reading comics for 30 years, 40 years, look away now. Boom. This guy is one of the species of aliens that the Dark Phoenix destroys when she absorbs and eats a sun and she destroys their planet. And this is what led to the idea that Jean Grey had to die. That was the editorial mandate, because she destroyed this entire populated planet of broccoli people. But we saw them right here, back here, first in Avengers number 4. So very cool. That's the first time we've seen these folks. I forget, they do have a name. I don't have it in front of me to be able to tell you what the species is called, but yeah, they were wiped out. So, but this guy has been marooned on Earth. Captain America's like, listen, don't worry about it. We'll help you. You free the Avengers. I'll talk to them. Trust me. We'll get your ship out for you. You don't want to deal with Submariner. And that's what happens. If you freeze the Avengers, Submariner finds out and he's like, dang it. But he finds his people. He finds the Atlanteans swimming away. Again, very nice underwater stuff. This is not a great transition. We talked about transitions from scene to scene. It's not a page turn. It's not a visual transition. It's not really even a thematic transition, because they're not talking about the Submariner in this panel, the panel right before. We're talking about it here. And so, great underwater stuff. I do like all the plant life. The fish are excellently drawn. I like this little silhouette as he's kind of bemoaning, like, what am I going to do? And then, hey, it's my guard. Like, here's the people. Maybe they're looking for me. And then he swims over. Really nice use of the blues. I think that's great. I like the waviness here in panel 6, where it's sort of currents and they're different colors of blue. I think that's really good as well. The only thing I'll tell you about this, and this is a theory, again, I get it. We don't have space. Your comic book space is at a premium unless you are printing your own comic and you have an unlimited amount of pages you can add. Your standard Marvel DC comics have about 20 to 24, depending on the era, pages of actual art in them. So here, the mantra is show, don't tell. So we see Submariner sees his people, and then there's a kind of a close-up or closer of him swimming towards us, the reader. And now in his mind, he's like, they see me. They're turning. They bow in acknowledgement. I'm no longer alone. I found my people. Don't tell me what somebody else is doing that you're watching that I can't see. Show it to me. Show it to me. Show me above him as the people are bowing down. And that's, again, where if you had more room, if we hadn't used the first splash page, which didn't need to be there, we could have jumped right into the story. That would not have been a big deal. I mean, it still would have been a splash page, but take right into the story, give us some more space. Maybe we'd have that. In this case, it's too much to show in a 5 by 5 inch panel that then gets reduced further into comic book size. So I understand the logistics of why it had to be done that way. But again, typically that's a bad practice. You absolutely want to make sure that you are showing us what's happening, not telling us what's happening. And I do want to really point this out. There are some comics that we've been reviewing in other series on the channel where the inkers are not always doing a great job when and how they're using their rendering. So rendering is all the little lines that make up either the texture on something, the shadows, the transition from shadow to light. And that's what these lines are. So basically what you've got here is there's light from above, because of course in the ocean, right, that's all there would be. There shouldn't be a lot of light sources underneath the ocean. It's the light filtering down from above. So the light would hit the top, and so his shoulder is round. So underneath the bottom of that shoulder, there is a shadow. And out of that, you have these rendering lines. These are hatch marks, not cross hatch, because it's only one set. Cross hatch is when there's two sets of opposing directions and they make crosses. So this is hatching, but what it does is it acts as a gray to take us from solid dark to bright white, and this is in between. So this is the transition that helps sell the roundness of the shoulder. And you see it here on the chest muscles, the other shoulder, on the abdomens. That is great rendering. That is subtle, smooth, and works off of the shadows. It isn't just done on its own. When you have just sort of rendering lines that don't connect to any kind of shadow, they don't work. Those are what I call hairy lines, meaning they almost look like they're supposed to be hair on an object or a figure, as opposed to shading. So if it's a shadow, if something is casting a shadow, make it cast a shadow. If it's not, make it light and just transition between the two. That's what rendering is for. So here we go. We got a page turn transition. That's good. Good job. Page turn transition. We like it. And I mean, a little bit of a thematic transition in that we go from Namor underwater to the Avengers going underwater to find the ship. So they managed to find it. And here's where it gets a little weird. I don't understand. So Thor is going to use his hammer and essentially have Mjolnir cast out magnetic waves that will pull the ship out of the ocean bottom where it's buried. But for some reason, he needs to see a picture of it. What's the picture matter? Like, why does Thor need a little, TV in his hand to see it? I don't understand. And wouldn't this be more in line with maybe something that Iron Man would do, right? He's got his repulsors, which would push things away. What if he reversed the polarity of his repulsors to pull the ship out? Like, let's mount essentially a Iron Man repulsor on the ship, and instead of them, like magnets, instead of them pushing away, they're attracted to each other. You flip the pole and now they're attracted to each other. This seems like it would be up Iron Man's alley and not Thor's, but this is one of those at this time, Mjolnir can do anything. Fair enough. So they get the ship, and now the guy's like, hey, this is perfect. I can fix it right here. I have no problem being underwater now that it's not buried in the bottom of the ocean. Thank you. That's great. And Cap comes up and everybody's cool. And all of a sudden, boom, there's an attack. There's a big explosion. Giant Man and Cap get knocked into the water, and it's Namor and the rest of the Atlanteans, and they are attacking. So you can see the bubbles on their heads. So unlike Namor, the other Atlanteans the blue-skinned Atlanteans can't breathe water. And so they've got their sort of reverse scuba. Instead of us carrying air to the water, they carry water into the air. And they attack. And we get a pretty good fight here for a bit between Iron Man and Namor. I did want to point this out. Again, hard to do. There's a lot of little scenes. This is where I try to go by the idea, if you can, as I'm reading a script as a comic book artist and I want to draw something and I'm going to draw this, I will try to find how can I do it in the fewest panels possible. The reason you do that is efficiency. It's faster. It's faster for the entire art team that's involved, but it also allows for more flexibility in the page layout. If I don't need 6 panels at the top, 8 panels in a page is a ton. And each of these is very, very small. These are like 3 inches by 5 inches. So you can't have this grand explosion of this energy coming, blowing up the rock around him, Captain America and Giant Man flinging off, and then Namor and his forces swarming over this rock. Like, those are 2 panels that really need attention. They need to be big. They have dramatic input, or it's a dramatic effect. And when they're so small, it kind of loses that drama, right? You can only show Namor and a couple, soldiers behind him, as opposed to what if this was, the width of the page and you could see 20 or 30 soldiers behind him. That would be really cool. So again, anytime you have an opportunity where maybe, yes, I understand there's dialogue and sometimes dialogue determines the panel, right? Somebody talks and somebody else talks and you do it panel to panel. You can combine those. And sometimes there's a lot better ways to do that. So, but yeah, this is a good fight. Like I said, with Iron Man and Namor, I think those two are very cool because, of course, Namor is all sort of nature, right? He's underwater. His powers come from his mutation, from being a hybrid between humans and Atlanteans. So his strength comes from his muscle, his bones. Iron Man is all technology. He's kind of the exact opposite. Inside, he's as human as they come, probably even more so because he's frail. He needs his armor to keep him alive. So I like that juxtaposition of the two characters. I think that kind of battle is really, really good. We have some great Jack Kirby rubble. I've talked about this before. His rubble is one of the things I can spot it and immediately I know that's Jack Kirby. It's just this sort of like very angular lines, the thick shadow that he uses, as opposed to, like, you look at Namor, very soft, very fluid form of lines over the legs, arms, stuff like that. Whereas the rubble is a bit more angular. And so, like I said, Jack Kirby rubble to me is instantly recognizable. So the fight continues, and the Atlanteans are calling for help because they cannot contain Thor. And that's a great image of Thor. Like, I love, it's a good choice of the wide panel there. That's where it makes sense. You want it to look like Thor is single-handedly fighting off a horde of people, and you can't do that in a 3x3 square. You need some room. And as well, he's swinging that hammer wild and broadly, and that needs, again, you lose that in an itty-bitty little panel. So the horizontal format gives us a really nice chance to get a big composition of that swing motion. You've got great foreshortening of the hammer being closer to us and the handle coming away to his hands. Great pose. It almost looks like referencing a crazy big baseball swing. Like, it's really, really good form there of the two arms kind of crossed over, one leg striding out. Very good stuff. And then again, Mjolnir can do anything. So they shoot, Atlantean energy rays at him, and he just goes, nope, I'm good. Catches it on his hammer, sends it into the ground, which takes it back to the Atlanteans and zaps them with their own energy. It's great. So yeah, that's really, really good. Let's see. I'm checking my notes. So just so you know, I take copious notes for every issue. Most of the time it's just to remind me in case I forget something, but I do want to just check every once in a while and make sure that I have not missed anything. So far, so good. So here's Giant Man underwater, caught in a net by the Atlanteans, and he cannot hold his breath forever. So even though he's quite large, so very smart. He shrinks to slip out of the net. And then when he sees a big giant fish, he grows again to become Giant Man to get back in the fight. Nice use of the powers. This panel in here is awesome. The first two panels are really good with the lighting and the blue color, but I love how he's swimming between the ropes. So you've got nice texture. It's very subtle but simple for the netting. But then in the background net is just these black silhouettes of it. And then he's casting a shadow as he swims out on the rope below him. The one leg in the background is shadowed. This is just really subtle, but really, really nice shading, even though we're talking about underwater lighting. So that's really great stuff there. Giant Man comes in and starts bowling guys over, which is terrific. Sorry, I'm going to take a little sip. So they mentioned Captain America, like what happened to him. And of course, he's crawling up the rock. He had also got knocked into the water. So he was just kind of like, you know what, I'm going to bide my time a little bit. and just see like what's going on here. Um, Obviously he knows the Avengers are good guys, but he's not fought with them before, so he's kind of like trying to figure things out. How would he fit in? How, you don't want to make, you don't want to foul up they've got a great working relationship with how they work together, their powers, their coordination. They know each other. He's the new guy. But he does make a comment here about the Submariner and that how he is fearless. And I kind of read this the wrong way. So even the Submariner, well, maybe I didn't. Even the Submariner is a fearless foe. If there had been such men in my day, what epic battles we might have fought. Now, at first glance, I went, yeah, no, Submariner was in your day because we have this, the Invaders. Now, unfortunately, the Invaders, this comic, which retells essentially tales that nobody knew about from World War II of this great superhero team featuring Captain America, Bucky, Namor, the Human Torch, and his partner Toro. So these guys were fighting the Nazis in World War II. And so Captain America theoretically has fought with Submariner in the past. But obviously he does not recognize him as such here. And that's because, of course, Invaders, that comic came out in 1975. So that is the very definition of a retcon, meaning continuity has been retroactively changed so that Captain America and Submariner fought together in World War II, whereas here they don't know each other at all. But they've got Rick Jones. The Atlanteans have Rick Jones. That's it. Cap's not going to let that go by. He reminds him of his best friend, Bucky. So he jumps in and starts fighting. And then all of this battle has started to destabilize this island that they're on. So the Atlanteans are going to, they're going to cut their losses. They think the island will collapse and then the Avengers will drown. So they take off. But what it was the rising of Broccoli Guy's, so-called Broccoli Guy's spaceship. So the island's fine. The Avengers are going to be okay. It's just his spaceship taking off. And then this panel here, again, it's so small, but it's really good. I wish it was bigger. I also wish Captain America was colored blue, but that's a small coloring error. It's no big deal. But we've got Captain America, Iron Man helping Rick Jones up, Thor looking up, a giant man in the foreground as they're watching that spaceship rise into the sky. So that's a really nice panel there of kind of that team dynamic is pretty good. And we find the Wasp. She was just kind of, I guess, hiding. I mean, she did a little bit. She distracted Namor at one point, and we don't know what else she was doing, but that's a little disservice to the character, to be honest. I'm glad that as time goes on, we actually do give characters, especially like the Wasp, spoilers, she ends up becoming the chairperson of the Avengers and leading the Avengers for a while. So she's a really good character, and they do end up really deepening her characterization. In these early days, she's very shallow, and that's just, it's a sign of the times. And that's why I tell you at the beginning of every issue or every episode, when was this comic published? 1963 is different than 2026. So it is what it is. The next panel there, I like the idea. I just don't think the execution is done well. So what I mean is, this is a down shot. We talk about cameras, and our eyes as the viewer are the cameras, the way you would have a camera for a television show. Now, with television shows, say you have a stage, actors and things are performing, and the cameras move around them to capture different angles. You don't rotate the set, and keep the camera locked in. You move the camera around. So for us, when we talk about shots or angles in comics, we can't move the reader's eyes around. So we in turn move the scene and draw it from different perspectives. And this is a down shot, meaning if this is a camera and we're looking through the lens of a camera, we are looking down. We know that because we see the tops of heads. Captain America's head, his shoulders. Thor's head is top of his shoulders. Iron Man and Rick Jones as well. But Giant Man and the Wasp, Wasp a little bit, but more so Giant Man is drawn straight on. So that's the wrong angle. The best way to do that would be to still show him from above. We're high enough up that we're up above his head too. That's not a problem. And we could still draw him that way. He's still large, and you just draw him in scale. You just draw him much bigger and overlapping other characters, so we know that he's in front. But or you could even do it the other way. Put the Wasp in front of him very small, overlapping him very large, and that counteracts the idea that larger things are closer, but you still draw it from the top down, and that angle is kind of lost on Giant Man. Beyond that, of course, they all agree to bring Captain America into the Avengers, so he fits that gap that they've had in their membership. So now they go from 4 to 5, back to 5 as the originals, and that leaves Rick Jones thinking about the Hulk, because the Hulk was the original. Rick Jones has palled around and helped the Hulk out from the beginning, but now he's getting sucked into not only the adventures of the Avengers, but also Captain America. And so, what happens if Rick Jones kind of partners up with Captain America? Where does that leave the Hulk? Who needs him more, right? And so that is the question we are left with as we get to the end of this issue. So there we go. Let's cut back over to the desk, and we're going to wrap this one up. So that is Avengers number 4. And as you can tell, thank you for sticking around. This one was going to be a big one. Obviously, the reintroduction of Captain America to the Marvel Universe is incredible. And to have him drawn by co-creator Jack Kirby is phenomenal. It would seem blasphemous to have Captain America returned with anybody else penciling that story. So this is a really big one. It's truly iconic. When you start to talk about what are the greatest comic books in Marvel history, this one is up there, because if you don't bring Captain America back in Avengers number 4, everything is different. The Avengers moving forward are different. The idea of having that patriotic hero that we can look to in times of trouble, or who can reflect our own uncertainties about the government or America or culture. That's what Captain America can do. The idea of him being a man lost in time and bringing sort of older generational concepts or priorities to a modern era is always very interesting storytelling. So all in all, it's just really a great moment and very powerful. So from an art perspective, I would kind of there are some things that work. There's some, I told you there's a lot of things I would have done differently. But I would give it probably a 7 out of 10 artistically. But from an iconic standpoint and how important this comic is, that's got to be worth at least a 1.5. So, I mean, this is really like an 8.5 out of 10 combined with the art and the iconic nature of the book. So that's my ranking. As always, I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? Was this a big one? Is this your first time seeing how Captain America rejoined the Marvel Universe in the comics? Obviously, it's different than in the movies. So, I think they streamlined the story a bit in the movies, which I think works very well for cinema. But again, I like this. So let me know your thoughts. I always love to hear them. And again, thank you all for spending your time with me as we look at Avengers number 4. Keep your eyes open for that new Captain America series. Now that Cap has been revealed here, we can dig into his solo series. So keep your eyes open for that as well. But in the meantime, we'll be here same time next week with even more Avengers. Thanks.